The stars looked peaceful through the windows of the transport ship New Horizon. Amy Morrison pressed her small face against the cold glass and watched them twinkle in the darkness. She was 8 years old and had spent most of her life on spaceships, but the stars still made her happy. "Look, Ben, that one's really bright," she said to her friend sitting next to her. Ben Carter was 2 years older and liked to act like he knew everything about space. "That's not a star, Amy, that's a planet. My dad told me we'll reach our new home in 3 days." Amy smiled. Ben always tried to sound smart, but he was nice to her. Most of the older kids on the ship ignored her, but Ben played games with her and helped her with her homework. There were 43 children on the New Horizon, all traveling with their families to start a new colony on a distant world. Dr. Lisa Hayes walked through the passenger area, checking on the families. She was the ship's doctor and made sure everyone stayed healthy during the long trip. She stopped when she saw Amy and Ben looking out the window. "Are you too excited about your new home?" she asked with a warm smile. "Yes," Amy said, bouncing in her seat. "Daddy says there are purple trees and 2 suns. I want to climb the purple trees." Dr. Hayes laughed. "Just be careful when you do, and make sure your parents are watching." On the bridge of his escort ship, Commander Jake Morrison stared at the communication screen with growing worry. His daughter Amy was on that transport ship, and the message he just received made his stomach feel sick. "Sir, the Zephyrian fleet is moving toward our position," said his communications officer. "They're demanding we turn back." Jake had dealt with the Zephyrians before. They were large reptile-like beings who loved to fight. Most species in the galaxy avoided them when possible, but they had never attacked human ships before. Everyone knew the rule: never hurt human children. It was the one law that every species followed without question. "Send a message to the transport," Jake ordered. "Tell Captain Blake to be ready for anything." On the New Horizon, Captain Ryan Blake received the warning. He was a former soldier who had seen many battles. The news about the Zephyrians made him nervous, but he tried not to show it. The last thing he wanted was to scare the families on his ship. "All security teams, report to your stations," he announced over the ship's communication system. "This is just a safety check." Amy heard the announcement and looked around. Some of the adults looked worried. Her mother wasn't on this trip. She had stayed home to finish her work. Only Amy and her father had come on this journey. "Is something wrong?" Amy asked Ben. Ben tried to look brave. "No, it's probably nothing. My dad says space captains have to do safety checks all the time." But both children could feel that something was different. The adults were whispering to each other, and some mothers were holding their children closer. In space, the Zephyrian fleet approached the human ships. General Vextar stood on the bridge of his command ship looking at the humans on his screen. He was over 8 feet tall with dark green scales and yellow eyes. Like all Zephyrians, he believed that strength was the only thing that mattered in the universe. "General, the humans are refusing to leave," reported his second-in-command. Vextar smiled, showing his sharp teeth. "Then we will take their transport ship. When we have their children, they will have to listen to us." "Sir, the galactic law says we cannot harm human children," the officer warned. "We will not harm them," Vextar said. "We will just take them. The humans will give us what we want to get their children back. It is a perfect plan." But Vextar did not understand humans as well as he thought he did. The Zephyrian ships surrounded the New Horizon. Captain Blake tried to call for help, but the Zephyrians were blocking all communications. Jake Morrison could see what was happening from his escort ship, but he was outnumbered 10-1. "Sir, they're boarding the transport," his weapons officer reported. Jake's hands shook with anger. His daughter was on that ship. "All ships attack formation. We're going in." "Sir, there are too many of them. We can't win." "I don't care," Jake said quietly. His voice was cold and scary. "My daughter is on that ship." On the New Horizon, the Zephyrian soldiers broke through the main doors. They were huge and frightening, with weapons that glowed with deadly energy. Captain Blake and his security team tried to fight them, but they were quickly overwhelmed. "All passengers stay in your cabins," Blake shouted before a Zephyrian stunner knocked him down. Amy and Ben were in the children's play area when they heard the fighting. Other children started crying, but Amy grabbed Ben's hand. "We need to hide," she whispered. They ran toward the medical area where Dr. Hayes worked. Behind them, they could hear the heavy footsteps of the Zephyrian soldiers and the screams of frightened passengers. Dr. Hayes was trying to calm down a group of younger children when Amy and Ben burst through her door. "Doctor, there are monsters on the ship," Amy cried. "It's okay, children, just stay behind me," Dr. Hayes said, but her voice was shaking. The door exploded open. 3 Zephyrian soldiers entered, their weapons ready. They had never seen human children before and were surprised by how small they were. "Stay back," Dr. Hayes shouted, spreading her arms to protect the children. The lead Zephyrian soldier spoke in broken human language. "We take children. No harm, if no fight." "Please, they're just babies," Dr. Hayes begged. Amy was terrified, but she was also angry. These creatures had come onto their ship and scared everyone. Without thinking, she ran toward the door, trying to escape. "Amy, no!" Dr. Hayes screamed. Ben ran after his friend. "Wait for me!" The Zephyrian soldiers panicked. They had been told to capture the children, not chase them. In their confusion and fear, they did the one thing they should never have done. Energy. Beams filled the room. Dr. Hayes screamed as she watched Amy and Ben fall to the floor. The 2 children who had been looking at stars just hours ago would never see their new home. The Zephyrian soldiers stared at what they had done. Even they knew they had just broken the galaxy's most important rule. Far away on his escort ship, Commander Jake Morrison felt something break inside his heart. He didn't know yet what had happened to his daughter, but somehow, he knew she was gone. The galaxy was about to learn why humans had rules about protecting their children, and why breaking those rules was the last mistake anyone would ever make. The news traveled faster than any spaceship could fly. Within hours, every human colony, every human station, and every human ship in the galaxy knew what had happened to Amy Morrison and Ben Carter. 2 children, playing and laughing just moments before, were now dead because aliens had broken the one rule that kept the galaxy safe. Dr. Lisa Hayes sat in the medical bay of the rescue ship, staring at her hands. They were still shaking 3 days after she watched the children die. Captain Elena Rodriguez sat across from her, asking questions for her report. "Tell me again what you saw," Elena said gently. Lisa's voice was barely a whisper. Amy tried to run. She was so scared. Ben followed her because he didn't want to leave his friend alone. The Zephyrians they fired without thinking. The children never had a chance. Elena wrote down every word. This report would go to the highest levels of human government. Every detail mattered now. On Earth, President Marcus Webb stood in his office looking out at the city. His aide, a young man named Peter, waited nervously by the door. "Sir, the calls are coming in from every human world," Peter said. "They all want to know what we're going to do." President Webb turned around. His face looked older than it had, just a few days ago. "Activate Protocol 7. Peter's face went pale. "Sir, are you sure? Protocol 7 hasn't been used since the Kithara tried to wipe us out 200 years ago," Webb finished. "And look what happened to them. Get me Admiral Clark on the emergency line." Across the galaxy, Admiral Susan Clark was already preparing. She had been expecting this call. Her fleet was spread across 12 systems, but that was about to change. Every human ship, from the biggest battleships to the smallest patrol boats, would soon have new orders. "Admiral, the President has authorized Protocol 7, her communications officer reported. Susan nodded grimly. "Send the recall order to all fleets, every ship, every crew, every weapon we have. It's time to remind the galaxy why we have rules." On the human colony world of New Texas, a grandmother named Betty Walsh was teaching her granddaughter how to bake cookies when the news came. Betty had lived through the last alien war 60 years ago. She knew what this meant. "Grandma, why? Are you crying?" her granddaughter asked. Betty wiped her eyes and reached for her old communicator. "I'm not crying, sweetheart, I'm just remembering. Now go play in your room. Grandma has some calls to make." Within an hour, Betty had organized supply runs for the military depot near her town. All across human space, civilians were doing the same thing. They remembered the lessons their grandparents had taught them. When human children die, everyone helps with what comes next. At the biggest human shipyard in the galaxy, Chief Engineer Danny Walsh got a call that changed everything. He had been building civilian cargo ships, but now he had new orders. "Danny, we need those ships ready for combat in 2 weeks," Admiral Clark's voice said through the communicator. "Admiral, these are cargo ships. They carry food and supplies, not weapons." "Not anymore. Every ship that can fly will carry weapons. Every factory that can build will make ammunition. This is not a normal war, Danny. This is what happens when someone kills our children." Danny looked at his workers. Many of them had children of their own. They all knew about Amy and Ben. "You heard the Admiral," he announced. "We're not building cargo ships anymore. We're building warships." The cheers from his workers could be heard 3 buildings away. On the Galactic Federation space station, Council leader Zixthala was trying to understand what was happening. She was an insect-like alien who had led the Council for 20 years. She had never seen humans act like this before. "The human fleets are moving," reported her military advisor. "All of them. Every ship they have is heading towards Zephyrian space." "How many ships?" Zixthala asked. The advisor checked his reports. Again, "We're not sure. We think they have more ships than we knew about. A lot more." This worried Zixthala. The Federation was supposed to know about all military ships. If humans had been hiding ships, what else were they hiding? "Contact the human ambassador. Tell him we want to talk." But Ambassador Cale Thorne was already on his way back to Earth. He had been recalled for emergency consultations. Every human diplomat in the galaxy was going home. This left other species confused and frightened. Dr. Nathan Cross sat in his office on the Federation station, writing a report that no one wanted to read. He was a scientist who studied how different species thought and acted. He had spent years studying humans, and what he had learned scared him. "Humans are not like us," he wrote. "When other species fight, they fight until they get tired or run out of resources. When humans fight, they fight until the problem is completely solved. They don't just defeat enemies, they make sure those enemies can never threaten them again." He stopped writing and looked at his data files. Humans had fought 17 major wars in their history. In every single war, the species that started, the fight was either completely destroyed or never able to fight again. The Kithra Empire had killed human children during first contact. 6 months later, the Kithra Empire no longer existed. "The Zephyrians think they understand human warfare," he continued writing. "They have studied human conflicts and believe humans have limits. They are wrong. Humans don't have limits when their children are threatened. They have protocols. In Mindsea, Zephyrian space, General Vexitar was discovering that his perfect plan had become a nightmare. His government was asking hard questions about why he had authorized the capture of human children. "You said the humans would negotiate," the Zephyrian prime leader hissed at him. "Instead, their entire military is coming to destroy us." "They are bluffing," Vextar insisted. "Humans are weak. They care too much about their own losses to fight a real war." But even as he said it, Vextar was looking at reports that made him nervous. Human ships were appearing everywhere in space near Zephyrian territory. Ships that hadn't been seen before. Ships that seemed to have been waiting for this moment. Back on Earth, Jake Morrison stood in front of Admiral Clark's desk. He had asked for this meeting himself. "I want to volunteer for whatever you're planning," he said. "Jake, you just lost your daughter. You should take time to grieve." Jake's eyes were cold and empty. "I'll grieve when there are no more Zephyrians left to kill. My children." Admiral Clark studied his face. She had known Jake for 15 years. She had never seen him look like this before. It was the same look she had seen on human faces during the Kithera War. It was the look that made other species afraid. "What do you need?" she asked. "A ship, a crew, and a list of every Zephyrian who knew about the mission that killed Amy and Ben. Consider it done." As Jake left her office, Admiral Clark made a note in her personal file. Protocol 7 was not just about ships and weapons. It was about what humans became when their children were murdered. Jake Morrison was no longer just a father who had lost his daughter. He was now something much more dangerous. He was a human with nothing left to lose and everything to avenge. 3 weeks after Amy Morrison and Ben Carter died, the galaxy learned what human anger looked like when it was organized and controlled. It was not loud or messy like other species expected. It was quiet, careful, and absolutely deadly. Captain Maya Johnson flew her fighter through the darkness of space toward the first Zephyrian military base. Behind her, 50 other human pilots followed in perfect formation. They had trained for this mission for only 2 weeks, but they moved like they had been planning it for years. Target confirmed, Maya said into her communicator. Beginning attack run. The Zephyrian base had shields and weapons that should have been able to stop any attack, but the humans had been watching and learning about Zephyrian technology for decades. They knew exactly where to hit and when to hit it. Maya's squadron destroyed the base in 4 minutes. Every Zephyrian ship, every weapon, every communication device was turned into floating metal. But they left the life support systems working. The Zephyrians inside would live, but they would never fight again. Base 7 is down, Maya reported. Moving to Base 8. All across Zephyrian space, the same thing was happening. Human fleets appeared out of nowhere, destroyed military targets with surgical precision, and then disappeared before the Zephyrians could respond. It was like fighting ghosts who knew everything about you but revealed nothing about themselves. General Patricia Stone stood in the war room on Earth, watching dozens of screens that showed the battles. She was the human military's best strategic planner, and this was the most complex operation she had ever designed. "Ma'am, all primary targets have been eliminated," reported her aide, Lieutenant Davis. "What about their command structure?" Patricia asked. 70% of their military leadership is either dead or captured. The rest are in hiding." Patricia nodded. This was going exactly according to plan. But the plan was bigger than just destroying Zephyrian military forces. The plan was to make sure no species would ever again think it was safe to kill human children. On the other side of the galaxy, Lieutenant Colonel Sam Turner led a special team through the corridors of a Zephyrian government building. With him was Jake Morrison, who had volunteered for the most dangerous missions. "Target is 3 floors up," Sam whispered into his communicator. Jake checked his weapon. For 3 weeks he had been part of missions that captured or killed every Zephyrian involved in his daughter's death. This was the last one on his list. They moved through the building like shadows. The Zephyrians never saw them coming. When they reached the target room, they found General Vextar hiding behind his desk. "Please," Vextar begged in broken human language. "I surrender. I give up." Jake looked at the alien who had ordered the mission that killed his daughter. For a moment, his hand tightened on his weapon. Then he remembered something Amy had said to him once. "Daddy, you're not supposed to hurt people who can't fight back." "You're under arrest for the murder of human children," Jake said quietly. Sam Turner was surprised. He had expected Jake to kill Vextar on the spot. Most humans would have. "Jake, are you sure?" Sam asked. "Amy wouldn't want me to be a killer," Jake replied. "She would want me to be her daddy." But as they led Vextar away, Jake made sure the Zephyrian understood something important. "You're going to live, but you're going to spend every day of your life remembering what happens when someone kills our children." Back on Earth, Chief Engineer Danny Walsh was working 18 hours a day turning civilian ships into weapons of war. But he was also working on something else, something that would change how the galaxy saw human technology. "Dr. Chen, is the new system ready?" Danny asked. Dr. Alex Chen looked up from her computer screens. She had been developing artificial intelligence systems for the human military, but no one outside the human government knew how advanced they really were. "The AI network is fully operational," Alex reported. "We now have complete information about every Zephyrian military installation, supply route, and communication system. We know where they are before they know where they are." This was humanity's secret weapon. While other species fought wars with ships and soldiers, humans fought wars with information and planning. They had been quietly watching and learning about every species in the galaxy for 200 years. On the Galactic Federation station, Council leader Zix Thala was trying to understand reports that made no sense. How can the humans be attacking 12 different systems at the same time? She asked her military advisor. We don't know. Our intelligence said they had maybe 300 military ships, but they're operating like they have thousands. Where did the extra ships come from? The advisor looked nervous. We think they converted civilian ships, but that should take months, not weeks. Zixathala realized something that made her very afraid. The humans had been planning for this kind of war long before it started. They had protocols and procedures and backup plans that no other species knew about. Dr. Nathan Cross was no longer writing reports. Instead, he was trying to warn anyone who would listen about what was happening. The humans are not fighting a war, he told the Federation Council. They are solving a problem, and their solution is to make sure the problem can never happen again. What do you mean? Asked a council member. I mean, they are not trying to defeat the Zephyrians. They are trying to eliminate the Zephyrians as a threat forever. They will not stop until every Zephyrian military installation is destroyed, every Zephyrian leader is captured or dead, and every Zephyrian citizen understands that threatening human children means the end of their civilization. Meanwhile, Dr. Lisa Hayes found herself working for a part of the human military she had never heard of before. Her job was to make psychological reports about what she had witnessed when Amy and Ben died. Why do you need this? She asked Captain Laura Bennett, the officer in charge of her section. Because every Zephyrian military base needs to know exactly how those children died, Laura explained. They need to understand that this was not an accident or a mistake. It was murder. And they need to know that humans remember every detail. Lisa was horrified. You're going to use my medical report as a weapon? Dr. Hayes, those Zephyrian soldiers are having nightmares about what they did. Their commanders are afraid to give orders because they know humans are coming for them personally. Fear is a weapon, and right now, it's the most effective weapon we have. As the days passed, the Zephyrian military began to collapse, not because they were losing battles, but because they were losing the will to fight. Every Zephyrian soldier knew that humans were not just fighting their military. They were hunting down every individual who had been involved in killing the children. General Vextar, now in a human prison, tried to send a message to his government. Surrender, he wrote. Surrender everything. Give the humans whatever they want. These are not the weak creatures we thought we knew. These are something else entirely. But it was too late for surrender. The humans had made their decision. The Zephyrian hegemony would cease to exist as a military power, not through genocide, but through something more systematic and permanent. The galaxy was learning that humans did not fight wars the way other species did. They ended them. 6 months after Amy Morrison and Ben Carter died, Jake Morrison stood in the place where his daughter's life had ended. The New Horizon had been turned into a memorial ship, floating in space near the new human colony. Fresh flowers from dozens of worlds filled the children's play area where Amy and Ben had spent their last happy moments. Jake was not alone. Families from across human space had come to remember the two children whose deaths had changed the galaxy forever. But Jake was also there for another reason. Today, the Galactic Federation would announce new laws that would make sure no human child would ever die like Amy and Ben again. President Marcus Webb stood at the podium in the Federation Council chambers, looking out at representatives from hundreds of species. Many of them looked afraid. They had good reason to be. 6 months ago, 2 human children were murdered by Zephyrian soldiers. President Webb began. His voice was calm, but everyone in the room could feel the power behind his words. Today, the Zephyrian hegemony no longer exists as a military power. Every Zephyrian involved in those murders has been captured and tried. Every Zephyrian military installation has been destroyed or converted to peaceful purposes. Council leader Zix Thala shifted nervously in her seat. The human military response had been more complete and devastating than anyone thought possible. But this is not about revenge, Webb continued. This is about making sure it never happens again. Today we propose new laws to the Galactic Federation. Senator Robert Hayes stepped forward with a document that would become known as the Morrison-Carter Amendment. It was named after the two children who had died, but it would protect all human children for generations to come. The amendment has three parts, Robert explained. First, human monitors will be stationed in every major system in the galaxy. Second, any species that threatens human children will face immediate response from human forces. Third, humans will have the right to protect not just our own children, but any children from any species who are threatened with violence. The room was silent. Many species had expected humans to demand territory or money. Instead, they were asking to become the galaxy's protectors. Admiral Susan Clark stood up to explain the military aspects of the new law. We have built monitoring stations throughout Federation space. These stations use the same technology that allowed us to defeat the Zephyrians so completely. We will know immediately if any human child is threatened anywhere in the galaxy. Dr. Keldar, Karen White, the human expert on galactic relations, addressed the concerns that many species had about the new arrangement. We understand that some of you are worried about human military power, she said. But remember this. We could have destroyed the Zephyrian homeworld and every Zephyrian colony. Instead, we chose to remove only their ability to make war. We could have demanded control of their territory. Instead, we helped them rebuild their government without military leaders. This was true. The humans had been surprisingly merciful in victory. Zephyrian civilians were safe and well-fed. Their worlds were still their own. But they would never, again, have the power to threaten anyone. Fleet Admiral Tony Mitchell stepped forward to deliver the most important message of the day. The rule protecting human children was never meant to protect the children, he said quietly. It was meant to protect everyone else from what we become when our children are killed. Today we expand that protection. Any species that harms children of any kind will face the same fate as the Zephyrians. In the audience, General Vextar sat in shackles, serving as a living reminder of what happened when the galaxy's most important rule was broken. He had been sentenced to watch every Federation Council meeting for the rest of his life, so he would never forget the consequences of his actions. Back on the memorial ship, Dr. Lisa Hayes was talking to a group of children from different species. They had come to learn about Amy and Ben, and to understand why their deaths had been so important. Were they special? Asked a young alien child with blue skin and large eyes. Lisa smiled sadly. No, they were just normal children. Amy liked to look at stars and climb trees. Ben liked to act smart and take care of his friends. They were special because all children are special. Why did the bad aliens hurt them? Asked another child. Because they forgot that children are the most important thing in the universe, Lisa answered. But now everyone remembers, and humans make sure everyone keeps remembering. Colonel Steve Parker had spent months conducting the war crimes trials that brought justice for Amy and Ben. Every Zephyrian who had participated in the mission was found guilty and sentenced to life in prison. But the trials had also served another purpose. The galaxy needed to see that humans believe in justice, not just revenge, Steve explained to Captain Laura Bennett. We could have simply killed everyone involved. Instead, we showed that we follow laws and believe in fair trials. Even for the people who killed our children? Laura asked. Especially for them. That's what makes us different from species like the Zephyrians. We don't become monsters, even when fighting monsters. Chief Engineer Danny Walsh was now working on a new project. Instead of building weapons, he was constructing the monitoring stations that would watch over the galaxy's children. These stations will be connected to every human ship and base in the galaxy, Danny explained to his team. If any child anywhere is threatened, help will arrive within hours, not days. Dr. Alex Chen had expanded her artificial intelligence network to cover the entire galaxy. The system could detect threats to children before they happened and alert human forces immediately. We're not just protecting human children anymore, Alex told her staff. We're protecting all children. That's our new job in the galaxy. The Federation Council voted unanimously to accept the Morrison-Carter Amendment. No species wanted to risk facing the same fate as the Zephyrians. As the ceremony ended, Jake Morrison walked to the window of the memorial ship and looked out at the stars. Amy had loved looking at those same stars. Now, human ships patrolled. among them making sure no other child would die like she had. President Webb joined him at the window. "Are you satisfied with the outcome, Jake?" Jake thought about his daughter, about her laugh and her dreams of climbing purple trees. "Amy would be happy," he said finally. "She always wanted to help other kids. Now she's helping kids all across the galaxy, even though she's gone." "The galaxy is safer now because of what happened to her and Ben," Webb said. "I know, but I still wish they were here to see it." As the memorial service began, children from dozens of species played together in the ship's recreation area. Human guards watched quietly from the shadows, keeping them safe. Above them, the new monitoring stations began their eternal watch. The galaxy had learned its lesson. The rule protecting human children had been broken once, and the consequences had been swift and total. It would never be broken again. In the quiet of space, Amy Morrison and Ben Carter were finally at peace, knowing that their deaths had made the universe a safer place for every child who would come after them. The stars they had loved to watch now watched over children everywhere, protected by humans who would never forget and never forgive those who would harm the innocent.